access? Or can we have everyone mute your devices for now? Thank you. Fanny, we can go on live now. Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to those on the other side of the world. Our speakers from Birmingham and London, Singapore as well. Very warm welcome to all our speakers today and our attendees from all the different dance schools in Singapore and also around the world. Welcome also to those tuning in, watching us live streaming today. My name is Lisa Latif, and I'm the chairman of the Singapore Dance Alliance. I will be a moderator for today's conference. We also have our team members today, Misha Haying, Artistic Director of Singapore Dance Alliance. Miss Ko Kai Mui, she won't be able to join us today. I think she might be joining us later because she's busy at the IBGPS workshop today. And then I would like to introduce you to our invited speakers. We have Mr. Robert Parker, Artistic Director of Elmhurst Ballet School. We have Miss Melissa Quek, the head of the School of Dance and Theatre at LaSalle College of the Arts. We have Mr. Peter Gunn, dance educator and founder of the Presence Project Dance Company. Mr. Resmi Malko, ballet tutor of the Central Ballet School. And Mr. Baptiste Bourguignon, director of the undergraduate programs and international development at the Place and London Contemporary Dance School. Dr. Karen may be joining us today later as well, but she's actually attached, but she may be joining us later, yeah. Thank you everyone for taking the time today, once again, to join us in this discussion. We had another first conference earlier this week, and we were talking also about the current issues that we're all facing today. The pandemic, you know, it has changed the world. I'm sure every one of us have some sort of changes with our life, and we all know that it's unprecedented pandemic since 2020. No doubt there's also changes in the art scene. So it has posed many challenges, I'm sure. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that. Shall we start with maybe Mr. Robert? Would you be able to share your thoughts about how this pandemic has changed the art scene, and especially, I mean, in Birmingham, in your school, Elmhurst Ballet School, and also I know that, you know, it's closely linked to the Birmingham Ballet Company. How the performances? Have you been doing any performances and things like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, where do I start? I mean, it's been a really, really turbulent 18 months. It has had huge impact. I would say both positive and negative. Obviously, starting with the obvious negatives is the lack of performance opportunities that have been happening across the sector in the UK. Speaking, you know, on behalf of, you know, close to home with the Birmingham Royal Ballet, I know they've really struggled, particularly with Carlos Acosta. It's his first year. He had all of these amazing plans, and then, of course, you know, going into lockdown. You know, financially, it's been very difficult for all of the companies with the lack of performances, lack of audiences. Thankfully, we had the furlough scheme here in the UK, so they have managed to stay afloat. But I think they've had to really be creative. And I think that's probably possibly one of the positives that has come out of this period, is that the organizations, schools and companies have really had to sort of realign their thinking and their planning, and how you're going to continue that relationship with the audiences and continue with that engagement. For example, doing more outdoor performances. You know, all the theatres, and some of them have opened. Birmingham Royal Ballet normally performs at the Hippodrome, which is over 3,000% capacity, 3,000 seats capacity. They have been unable to use it, but what's come out of this is forged a new relationship with the Birmingham Rep Theatre, who've managed to open their doors and offer a 50% capacity audience. So they have actually managed to be able to perform, you know, and the great positive for me and as director of the school is that because of the bobbling systems that they've had to adopt. So, for example, they've done a pared down version of Nutcracker, which was actually streamed online. They've actually had to segment the ballet into bobbles. So it provided the school a wonderful opportunity to perform the snow scene from Nutcracker using solely Elmhurst students and including the Snow Fairy. So it's been a good platform to showcase the relationship between the school and the company. So there have been some positives that have come out of it from our perspective, but it's the students and it's the dancers. I mean, you know, obviously performing over Zoom is no picnic, you know, no pas de deux, no point work, no space, grand allegro. So obviously the rudimentary training has suffered, and it's been the same in the company as well. But we are now emerging from it, and you know, with the vaccination program here in the UK at full swing, we are slowly coming out of the other side. So you know, there is a lot of optimism, and I think there's a lot of positives we can take away from this, and you know, using our practices moving forwards.
That's good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Robert. Mr. Resmi, I know that the graduates at the Central School of Ballet, they also do a lot of performances at the graduations and stuff. Did your school manage to do all that, Mr. Resmi? Mr. Resmi, you might have to unmute yourself. Could you unmute?
Yes, as Robert explained very well, I think. In the first lockdown, we were all shocked. We had to shut down. I mean, what we did, we transferred all the classes online very quick and in a full capacity, you know, including ballet, contemporary, jazz, dance studies and everything, but couldn't do part of the hardcore point. Last year, we couldn't do, because our third year is very kind of a junior company called Ballet Central. We couldn't do performing. They have to close in the first day. We have to close in the first day. They have to go on tour. So, but they managed to do lots of performing online. This year, we're lucky. Our graduation, they have to do around 11 venues around UK, which is great. We managed to do Nutcracker and stream that online. I think it's something new this year. So we rented the theater with all the COVID rules and lots of testing every day for the third years before going on stage. And they have to do it in a bubbles, you know, film. So it's lots of organization, lots of time, but I think it's paid off in the end. So we put that Nutcracker online for people to access it. Then we did manage to do touring from the theater starting from June, I think, June, July. So I think it was a very good outcome. I mean, it took us a lot of time to think and to change plans and everything. We came back to studios in bubbles. We kept the classes in a very small groups. And in the first, they were in their squares, not traveling, lots of, again, testing so just to keep them safe. And but yeah, I think was good. And hopefully this year we can start normal, and with vaccination in UK being fantastic. So as Rob said, we can start kind of normal a bit again. But no, we managed to do a lot of, I think the first thing, the good things came from this pandemic, lots of online classes, lots of performing, and you can see lots of companies and schools around the world.
Yes, that's another topic. Yeah, that's another topic we'll be touching about online. You know, moving forward, I don't know, Mr. Peter, do you think that, you know, this change will be permanent? You know, thinking that, I mean, it's been 18 months and I don't know how long more that it's going to go on for, you know, we're just hoping and crossing our fingers, aren't we? So do you think this change will be permanent? Like, you know,
well, in some ways, I hope that some of the good things that have emerged, whether in the schools or in the art scene here, I'm hoping they could be permanent. But let me qualify what I'm saying. I'm hoping that some of the new things and initiatives that have emerged, like going into artists as well as schools, going into the territory of dance films, something that is quite new in Singapore, but increasingly being explored. Whether films in the form of live streaming or films artistically created during dance showings, I think these are great opportunities that we hope could continue and have a kind of permanency even after the COVID situation. But as with all things COVID go, it's a little bit hard to gaze into the crystal ball and predict whether the restrictions which are currently on again, off again, are going to be a feature in the upcoming 1 to 2 years. It's really hard to tell. Everyone has to play a part. But some good things have emerged in the dance scene here and internationally, I'm sure, that I hope wouldn't just disappear once things become better.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Peter. Well, we know for sure that many of us have done online, classes and all that. And it's just inevitable. We had to make it. I mean, locally, we had a couple of lockdown sessions as well and home-based learning. I mean, Miss Melissa, I'm sure you were also teaching online, right? Could you share a little bit more about that? What positive, I mean, I guess online can never represent physical, training, but how can you keep your students motivated, like, keeping the positivity up?
I think what was really nice about what happened was that, students are at home alone. You're not there in a big group, but you are meeting regularly online. Fortunately for us, we had a lot of contact live, but we did do online teaching. And what came out of that was increased independence. I think students are forced to actually have to really be proactive about their learning, and then able to really get information from across the world, really. So, over the break, they were, tuning in and getting Gaga classes online, and they were, watching ballet classes and contemporary classes, not just from us, but from other people. I think also going online was very good for the teachers, because it really teaches you to hone your own language, the way you give direction, how succinct are you, the kind of imagery you're using. So we found that lecturers actually started to be more nuanced, and their imagery was more complex, and the scaffolding a lot clearer through that. Of course, you do lose things, like you wish you could go there and touch and really adjust on your own. But there was an upside. I think the other thing was just the ability to connect with other schools, other institutions online, because everybody then had access to Zoom, which meant that, actually for us, we worked with Baptiste and his students, and that was an amazing opportunity for my students to actually be in a class virtually with students from another country and a different sort of educational culture, perhaps, and with artists. So we had Singaporean artists, and we had artists from the UK working with them online, and they're producing something together, cross-culturally, cross-institutionally. So there was something really amazing about that for them, because it was very much about, what was going on in their heads.
Thank you, Miss Melissa. Well, there's always a silver lining to all these other things, isn't it? Mr. Baptiste, I mean, we are interested also to know about, how contemporary dancing could be done online. Was it difficult on your end?
Yeah, I think, we encountered all the same difficulties everyone else did. I can relate. We struggled. The students couldn't do any contact improvisation, for example, and any partnering in general. We have a full module which is all about partnering skills that we couldn't deliver. And then we just proposed it to the teachers and said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to go to the university and find a way to cancel it. And teachers are like, no, let's just question what partnering is. And let's just say we're going to partner with each other through the screen. Of course, it's not the same. Let's accept that we've lost something. But let's together question, what does it mean to partner? Does it have to be, through touch? Do we have to be in the same room? And we came up with some really fun and great learning for the students. And of course, we compensated as soon as we were back in the studio. It's like, okay, if we're allowed to touch, we will go back, because those skills are necessary. But it was really nice to see the openness and creativity of teachers and how responsive the students were. And then for some really positive cases where we consulted the students, basically, we said, okay, we're going to try to give you as much as we can. So we carried on with the normal classes, but then they were the ones feeding back and saying, actually, this one really doesn't work. And so could we either move it really somewhere different, or could we just forget that and do something else? And so we were basically, like everyone else, making discoveries along the way. And of course, ballet works very well, like particularly the bar work. And so we could carry on with that, and then center more static work in Cunningham classes or even release contemporary classes could still happen quite well. And so we we sort of went through the loss of, okay, we can't slide across the floor and dive and do all of the things that some floor work would do, for example, but we'll do other things, and we'll come back to these later. Yeah, and similarly to what Peter was saying and Melissa, there's been lots of positive things. It's also been like collaborating with La Salle has been super exciting, but also I had guest teachers from all over the world, and that was really fun for them because the students, we encountered people that would have cost us too much to bring all the way to the UK. And so it was really nice for them to encounter these people. And yeah, I mean, I have to say we've been really lucky. All our students stayed with us, and we were trying. And a huge part of this is the staff was really. We were trying to listen, and there was a lot of pastoral work of it's okay, we're going to go through this, and a lot of work where we reminded them how the world is. You know, artists often, we're the ones who teach the rest of the world how to survive. We're the ones who show the rest of the world how to adapt, because artists are often the ones who, well, you know, at the bottom of the priorities for governments across the world. We're the ones with the least money. We're the ones who are forgotten often, even though, of course, we're lucky. It was also a thing to say to them, no, let's be the ones who are going to come up with solutions. Let's be the ones showing the rest of the world what we can do despite all of this mess. Yes. That sounds old pink. It was also, you know, tough. It was very tough, just like for everyone else.
Well, it really shows how resilient dancers can be, artists can be, isn't it? So that's really good. Well, and how has it, I mean, all the classes being online is one thing. How about the intakes of the schools? Like, you know, many of you are from different schools, and how has it changed the intakes in terms of the overseas students, or you know, the auditions? How are the schools taking it? Mr. Robert, would you be able to share a little bit about how your school runs it?
Sure. So we have our audition cycle every year, as I'm sure everybody else does, including international as well. I mean, one of the advantages of having the Zoom and being able to really embrace the technology was the ability to hold international auditions from a studio here in the theatre at the school. So we did our Japan auditions. It was very successful. We had the students on a very large screen. We had music, because one of the biggest challenges, and I'm sure you will all agree, is the musicality, the delay that you have. It's just, you're tearing your hair out, of course. So when I was maybe teaching a repertoire class, I would have my music, which was in sync with what I was doing movement wise, and then when it was a student's turn, wonderfully they had a pianist with them, so I would liaise with the pianist beforehand and talk about protocols, how it was going to work. You know, you have to embrace the technology. You've got to work with it. It fails us left, right, and center. We just, you know, but I think everyone has done such a great job with it, and I think there's a lot of this technology that we're embracing and we'll probably continue to use moving forward, because like Baptiste said, you know, in terms of the financial outlay for traveling halfway across the world, when you can actually do it at the click of a mouse, if you can make it work, why not? Absolutely. So it's actually been quite successful in terms of our intake for the year. Of course, we have had lots of dropout internationally, so those who have accepted, particularly the young ones, you know, there's been a slightly different culture, and I noticed it at our summer schools. Even our senior summer school, we'd see elements of homesickness, even across just a period of a week, which was quite telling. That was the first time in my 9 years of running the summer schools that I'd encountered that in the senior. And I think then you get into the mindset of the student. If they've been locked at home for 18 months and have really missed out on that emotional and social development, it's you know, it's completely understandable. So we are seeing a lot of dropout particularly from the really young students, like 11 years old. But I'm delighted that a lot of people, they are, you know, when the passion is strong and this is what they want to do for the rest of their life, they will make it work. So we have an international student joining from Australia, and she will have arrived today is the first day. Oh, so we're really thrilled that, you know, the wheels keep turning, and if the passion is strong, the students will make those necessary sacrifices.
I guess so. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Robert. How about on your side, Mr. Resmi? Need to unmute yourself, Mr. Resmi. Yeah.
I mean, with lots of talks, we are hoping in one point in December to do some in person in studio. We couldn't do audition, so we decided to go online. We did Japan, same as Robert is explaining, with through Zoom. So with the 2 big screens, and was quite successful. But majority of them was by audition video. So we decided, we set up a class. What do we wanted to see? Then we put it in our website so people can refer to that. So we have lots of applicants. Majority of them, they kind of stay true to the class we put online, or they could have a choice to do their class. I mean, the part we're missing, it's like being live emotionally, how they react with the music, how they react when they're all together. I think that is something we need to see in intake we took this year. But I think it's good to use technology. I still feel being in a studio, it's not the same as being online. That emotional, that chemistry you build, and how they react to the correction, how they respond to picking up fast. You know, there's something, I think it's going to be. We'll see how it goes this year. I mean, we have lots of applicants, so we are lucky to choose all around the world. So it's the first year we did everything online audition. So hopefully will be, you know, something good come up.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, talking about the online, this was actually one of the questions in the first conference that we had. There has been obviously a lot of online courses going on and things like that. You know, they in the first conference, somebody asked, and perhaps I might want to share this with everyone here as well, and then see what your views are. There has been quite a lot of online courses that sometimes it's even like 2-3 months, and then they get a certificate or something like that. I mean, compared to physical and all that, what are your thoughts about that? I mean, is it worth for students to be jumping from online courses, from this course to another course, and you know, taking as much as they can, or you know, we have to be a little bit more careful? Mr. Baptiste, would you have anything to say about that?
This is a great question. I mean, we at the beginning of the lockdown, I suppose there was a bit of enthusiasm. We need to keep going, and so we had no problem at all with attendance with online practices. And so even when we did something which was our summer school, we shifted the summer school online. So that was back in July 2020. We never expected it, but we had over 100 participants from all over the world. We did the same thing in July 2021, and we cancelled because we had 2 people signing up. And I think it showed that people by then were starting to get tired. That's how I interpreted it. There was a sense, particularly for some students who had done quite a lot of online stuff, I think there was a tiredness of and so when it was the end of the year and into the summer, and the idea of spending a bit more time online for classes was not well received. I think there is a future for it, for sure. And just like Robert said earlier, we do intend on keeping some online practices and courses. I think if they're short and very well targeted and for very specific things. So, for example, we have an MA in screen dance, and in that there are lots of things that we can do online. I mean, and of course the form of that practice is very adequate for this medium. So I think there is a future for it. And I think, very briefly to finish, I think there is also a shift culturally worldwide with higher education in general. I do believe, to some extent, we're due, for some sort of revolution. There's, technology has been seeping into everything. taxi drivers, deliveries, everything is being changed. The world is changing. And I do think education is sort of next on the list. And so I think we sort of need to brace ourselves for being ready to offer shorter courses. I think students like now to be able to do 6 months there, 3 months here. And so it might be that this is the world we're heading to. And of course, then online will become useful.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Baptist. But okay, Miss Melissa, would you like to share? I mean, having taught online and physical classes, what do you see? What's the difference between it? And of course, I don't know. I would assume that physical classes would definitely be more preferred, right?
I think that, again, as Baptiste was saying, it really depends on what we're teaching. There's something about a sort of a digital literacy that we're looking for nowadays, and understanding of how to work with the camera as well, that working over Zoom, working with the camera, actually hands-on, you will start to get. And, referencing the previous question, there is a need to start to be aware of how to perform for the camera, how to choreograph for the camera as well, because I don't think that's really going to change. The audience is starting to have an appetite for that as well. So you need dancers and creators who are versatile and able to handle multiple media. But one of the big things that we did notice is, it's a lot harder to translate and go online with first-year students. So if you don't already have a rapport with them, then it's so much harder. If they understand the way you teach what you're saying, you've already sort of instilled that in them. Then when you take it online, they understand what you are talking about. They get what you mean about how it should feel in the body, because you've done that with them in the studio before. So I think that was one of the biggest things that we found. Okay, second years, third years, it's easier to bring them online. First years, you try your hardest to get them into a studio and actually be there physically with them first, to lay that foundation. And so that tended to be how we would do it. And in terms of the kind of classes, like, is it okay for students to jump? I think it's that same mindset. We think older students, senior students who can really take ownership of their learning, it's good for them to customize and figure out the things that they're interested in, and try and get more of those experiences, so that, they're not all cookie cutter dancers and artists. But again, first years, you kind of want to be able to lay a foundation for them and just help them open their eyes a little bit and get them to know how to assess and choose the kind of courses that they want to go for.
Thank you, Miss Melissa. Mr. Peter, do you have anything to add as a dance educator?
I think the drift of your question was more towards, given the abundance of supply currently of online classes, especially those that try and tout a certificate within a month or within 3 months, whether there is any sort of legitimacy to these courses. So I share Karen's view from yesterday that it is extremely important for the participants to be discerning, to first do one's homework in terms of finding out whether this particular teacher, whether this particular organization is credible. I think a substantial amount of information exists online, which is spurious, but there is also a substantial amount of information which is accurate. So whoever it is that checks out online courses needs to do his or her due diligence in finding out the facts, differentiating fact from fiction, and then deciding whether or not a course is well worth investing, not just monetarily, but investing in one's effort and time, and whether eventually the outcome of it, whether in the form of a certificate or some specific skill set, whether it really stands this person in good stead.
Thank you, Mr. Peter. Thank you. I do agree. Does anyone have anything to add in this? We have a question here from one of the attendees. In the likelihood of the event, if the COVID situation persists, how are these schools going to expand or provide opportunities for international students to continue pursuing dance education outside of their countries? I think, maybe Mr. Robert, would you be able to share? I think that means that you will continue all the online auditions and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the hope and the plan is that once the vaccination program develops and expands, then it will open the travel corridors, and we will be able to hold face-to-face auditions. I think I agree with what everybody has said. You cannot fully replicate an audition, you know, Zoom via in person. I think there is something very personal about having that student, and not just from a responsive and reflective standpoint when you're actually delivering the material and seeing how they respond, but also from a health and safety. I mean, we would also, you know, conduct interviews. We would be doing physiotherapy screenings in person with our own faculty. So ensuring that they will be able to, you know, cope with the rigors of the vocational training. So I am optimistic about the future. Like I said, we have successfully managed to recruit, I would probably say, almost 15 international students in our last audition round, some of which we were able to see in person for our finals. But I think we will always try at every opportunity to open those doors to our international students. And I refuse to allow COVID be a barrier to, again, allowing the hopes and dreams of these students to be able to flourish and actually realize their full potential by coming to a vocational school like this. So I think we will adapt. We will continue to adapt. We will continue to change our practices. And I think we've all proved to ourselves just how adaptable as dancers and as dance educators we can be. And I think, you know, like we said, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what's around the corner. But I do know that we will continue to adapt and morph and do what is necessary to continue living the dream. I think we will do it. We're strong.
Yes, dancers are resilient. Once again, the artists. Anyone has anything else to add? Attendees, all our guests, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask, or you can private text us, or you can raise your hands and then you can switch on, unmute yourself to ask any questions if you do have any questions. We have a question from someone here. They're asking also, what is the recommended age for a child to start contemporary ballet training? Do you think, I mean, it has changed, you know, the dance evolution with last time being only just classical ballet and then modern and then now contemporary. So what is the recommended age to start? Mr. Baptiste, would you like to answer these questions perhaps?
This is an interesting question. I don't know if I could say there was a recommended age. I think there needs to be passion and love, and so I would say, of course, the earlier you start, the better, because obviously you'll have more experience. You'll be and the body is capable of more when we're younger. There's something we can't ignore. But at the place anyway, at LCDS, we definitely have students who have only started dancing, you know, 2 years ago or 3 years ago, but are determined, hardworking, passionate, and in all likelihood will end up being in the profession. And even from experience, I mean, it's often the case with male dancers, where often we start later. That I think if you really want it, once you've discovered that passion, if you want it more than anything, you'll make it happen. But of course, the sooner the better. Although the danger, of course, is that you start very early and then you get fed up with it, and then you've had enough of dancing when you become a teenager, and that's it. But so I don't think there would be a recommended age specifically.
Mr. Rasmi, do you have anything to add for that, like in terms of ballet and then contemporary?
I mean, as you know, early you start, it's always better. I mean, as you start, you know, as you're in young age, any movement, any form of dance.
What round about what age do you think,
Oh, it's hard to
we
predict,
start
but
as early as 6, 7.
I think around 6, 7, 8 years old is good. I think any movement, kids discover playing with music, play with the movement. It's not necessarily called ballet or contemporary. But I think has to be part of being fun. They have to love moving around and discover who they are, discover their body. But I think that is the best thing. I think let the kids try.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have a similar, actually related question. Is asking by an enrichment school teacher. So it's asking that is learning multiple dance genre beneficial for students' dance training? So probably we're looking at the students that is much younger for the enrichment age, probably from age 4 and 5 up to the teenager age range. So maybe you could give us your...
in perhaps starting, I would say from Singapore context, maybe we can start off with maybe from Mr. Peter. In Singapore context, I mean, we know that the academics side is also quite strenuous in Singapore. I mean, and then having them doing different genres. What are your thoughts about that?
I agree with Resmi's point earlier about having fun when they're starting out. I mean, kids will be kids in a sense that if they try a range of genres and if they really don't feel that they're flourishing or enjoying as much in some genres more than others, they will be pretty clear about what they don't like. And the reverse is true. They will be very clear about what they like. So for parents, I do feel when the kids are very young, it's useful. I'm not saying it's essential. It's useful to allow the kids the time and opportunity to discover what he or she is interested in. Because if they home in on a particular genre all too soon, that's not entirely advisable either. So allow the kids the chance to have fun in dance, enjoy dancing, creative dancing as well, and then home in on an area that they feel they can excel in. That's more important.
Miss Melissa, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, for me, I feel like it's the same as learning languages, right? Like you have that question of whether it's good to start your child on one language or multiple languages, and what that means for how they grasp it. But I think as Resmi was saying, it's that understanding of the body, especially at the early ages. If I've also said if I have a person who's been really good at basketball and then they come to me in the later years, but they really have that understanding of their body and they've really been honing it, like I'm perfectly happy to have them, come and audition for us. So I think that those early years, it's about that getting used to your body, getting used to space, getting used to other bodies in space and music and just playing with all of that. And so really allowing them to be introduced to a lot of different styles at an early age, creative movement, free movement, freestyling. I think that allows them to understand what's out there and helps them not to pigeonhole what dance is too early in their lives. And I guess I'm speaking also from someone who was exposed to a lot more styles from a young age. And I definitely appreciated that because it also teaches you a way to accent your movement differently, slightly different musicality, a slightly different use of weight and flow. And so I think that helps that sort of versatility and a sort of a multilingualism with dance. I actually think Baptiste had something to say earlier as well.
Yeah. Mr. Baptiste?
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I couldn't agree more with what Resmi was saying about this having fun part. I think I've too often seen parents. I used to teach young ones for a while, and sometimes I was a little bit disappointed when parents would come to me and would say, oh, the reason why I want them to dance is because it's for the discipline. And I would be like, what do you mean the discipline? They're at school all day. Like, of course there is a sense of discipline when you're doing a practice, but they need to have fun. It needs to be creative and it needs to be about musicality and all of these discoveries of how your body works, that are so important. And in terms of the variety of practices, it's been an interesting one for us, because at LCDS, so we have now revalidated our program. So we're starting next week. We're very excited with our brand new program with the first years. And in this new program, we have decided to take the choice to offer more practices. And it was received, as very exciting by many people, at worrying by others. But we really had to think carefully about how we were sending the message, what it meant. So now our students are going to be exposed to more hip hop practices, Kathak practices, South Indian and South Asian in general traditional practices, as well as some from the African continent. And some students were like, oh no, but I don't want to, I want to be a contemporary dancer. Why would I do all of these things? And so I think it goes back to this idea of specialism. Of course, we are London Contemporary Dance School. And so the practice you will be doing the most is still going to be contemporary. I think for us, one of the major shifts is saying you will still be doing ballet. But of course, now we've had to compromise. So you'll be doing a little bit less ballet so that we can find some space for all these other practices. So it's not about losing specialism at all, particularly in the later years when you need to specialize, but it's about your main form being influenced by all these practices. And you can see it. Even, for example, Robert was talking about Carlos Acosta. I mean, he's an amazing contemporary dancer. He's really good, because that's the thing. He understands his body very well. So, and when you look at all these practices, you could find the common thread. And it's always, how do you shift your weight? How do you use momentum? How do you use length, alignment, and it's all of these can relate. And so if we can help them young to see those common threads and to discover all these practices, I think it's always a good thing. But it doesn't mean we do not specialize. Of course there will be, and you'll see that in sports. You'll see that we've just finished the athletics at the Olympics. You can see they've all done more than one, even though they've got a specialty. They're all able to do more than one. I think it's always good to be exposed to more.
Thank you. In the first conference also, we had another questions regards to competitions. They were asking, is winning important in competitions for acceptance, in schools and things like that? So, Mr. Robert, would you like to share a little bit about that?
I think that's a very interesting question. And, I think competitions, I think they are, I'd probably refer to them as double-edged swords. They are wonderful when it comes to exposure to people like ourselves. And it may be some students, they may live in remote parts of the world, they may not get that exposure. And I think the beauty of obviously embracing technology is we can see people now. First of all, I take my hat off to anyone who would want to enter a competition. I never entered a competition in my entire life. Just the mere thought of it had me quaking in my boots. But I can understand why people want to enter them. And I think the performance opportunity, the performing under pressure, I think is great. And I'll give you one example, the positives of a competition. There was a boy who we brought over. I saw him on a competition recently. He was from Colombia, living in America, and I hadn't actually seen him dance in person because this was all over the pandemic. And we invited him to join our school, and we helped him with a very generous bursary because he was from a very poor background. He joined our school last year, and he went through the program. His idol was Carlos Acosta, and I was very quick to introduce him to Carlos, and then lo and behold, he has just started with Birmingham Royal Ballet. So to me, I think that was a very positive example of the power of exposure with a competition. However, I don't believe that there's certain things that competitions cannot offer you as a dancer, and I think there's a danger that the focus becomes so much on competition that you can somehow forget what dance is all about, the artistry side, the narrative, the beauty of creation, and all of those things. I think it's a really important supplement, but I don't think, because I've seen students before where unless they have that gold medal hanging around their neck, they don't believe that they have achieved. And I think it's also that instant gratification that a lot of young people today are constantly searching for. Whereas when you're in a dance company, you're in it for the long haul. You may have to stand with a spear at the back row of the Corps de Ballet for 3 years before getting that first opportunity. But is it worth the patience and the wait? Of course it is. And that's how you learn your craft. That's how you learn to be a Corps de Ballet dancer. And I think sometimes if you have serial competition dancers who just go from one competition to the next, I think they can somehow miss out on that. And I think they can be conditioned to expect results instantaneously without putting in the effort. So you'll see them, they'll arrive in a dance company in the Corps de Ballet, and then after 6 months, they're bored because they're not doing Don Quixote, they're not doing Le Corsaire. They're standing at the back learning that important craft of how to be a professional dancer. So I think it just has to be balanced, is my very long-winded answer. I do apologize. I'm sure there's other people with different thoughts.
No, I think it's very informative and yeah, very good. Actually, to let everyone know, a lot of competitors probably would want to know. Mr. Resmi, have you anything to share about this topic?
I totally agree with Robert. I think if you use a competition for your goals, not to be just to have that gold medal, because it will be 1 or 2 persons who are going to win. But I think it's the process you put in competition before going to competition, working one-on-one, growing up as a young dancers, using that and balancing training, because often you see people practicing same solo for a year, but you throw them in something different and they're not able to cope, and but I think if you use it for the right purpose, it's good to win, but one person is going to win. It's like in Olympics, just the preparation and reaching your goals, as Robert explained very well with his students from States, to reaching to your objective. I think that is good. We live in a culture of competition these days. Everybody is doing it, not just ballet, everywhere. But I think if it's being used for the right purpose, for me, it's a preparation, going to competition, how much you put efforts, and having chance to sit with your coach, teacher, working and putting efforts. We do prepare students for pre or Youth American Grand Prix. It's not about winning. It's about them exposing who they are and how they can do it and what they can find in the future, reaching good school for themselves or reaching to the good company. I think if it's good balance, I think it's a very healthy one. But it's just for winning the competition, I'm not sure it is the right one.
Thank you, Mr. Resmi.
I have a question. I just received a question. It's from a teacher, and he's asking what is the judge's view of a video recording for competition. So maybe Baptiste, would you like to?
This is another interesting question. I think, so first of all, I'm very new to the competition world. I think in terms of cultures, the ballet culture had historically, I think, more competitions than the contemporary ones. Although, I know they've existed, and I agree with everything was said by Resmi and Robert. I think, obviously, of course, it's not the same. If we had all been sitting in the audience next to each other, and there would have been this only one single moment opportunity to perform, and that can go sometimes really wrong, and most of the time really well because you've worked so hard for it. So of course it's not the same. Of course, like I'm able now to go over the solo 2 or 3 times. That person before sending the solo was able to record it maybe 5 or 6 times to make sure they had the best one in. So of course it's not the same. I think considering the situation and the world we're in, I think it's great. But of course, it becomes problematic if, just like Robert and Resmi were saying, if all your focus is on I want to win, then of course it becomes problematic. But I think if the process that everyone will have been through, even the process of having to set up a camera and film yourself, think about the lighting, think about the studio, think about the background, all of this will have still been a huge learning experience for everyone involved. And I think that's what we need to remember. That's what we need to focus on. Because yeah, it is a tricky one. I agree.
Thank you. Thank you. Lisa, you have any more? You need to unmute.
Yes, we had another question about balancing between academic and dance training. Perhaps Miss Melissa, would you like to share something about that?
Is the question about, we're talking about non-professional schools, like not a pre-professional school, but where you're having to be outside of your usual school to keep on dancing, right? I think that one is tough, but I would say, okay, I'll just give you an example of my own life, right? So for myself, I went the traditional route. So I was dancing at the same time as I was studying, but I actually went all the way up with A levels. So I was in a JC rather than going to for conservatoire training earlier. So I only went into the mixed academic and dance training at university. So only my degree level. But I still choose to be a dancer, and I don't regret any of that. But sometimes I do ask myself, what kind of dancer would I have been if I had chosen to go into conservatoire training much earlier? And it really is also depending on what kind of dancer do you want to be? What type of creator do you want to be? Which path are you valuing for yourself? And I'm very happy with my path now, but it doesn't mean I didn't question it earlier. And so I think that you do have to really make some of those decisions sometimes. But I will say also that if you make that choice to go really a lot more time into your dance training at an earlier age, it doesn't mean you can't add on the academics later in life. I don't think that in any of these cases, it's in a sense irreversible. You're constantly finding yourself and you're constantly uncovering new things about your talent and your body and the way you think and the way you create. And we're always adapting and moving with that. So, I think that depending on the choices that you're making, they should be considered, and you shouldn't just take the path of least resistance, and I shouldn't just go down the, I'm going to prioritize academics just because it's done. I think that's probably the only reason to regret either choice, is if you're making it because it's the safe choice. I think you need to make your choice based on, what are your dreams, what are your desires, and also believing in yourself. I don't think you should close doors on yourself. Don't close it on yourself, basically. So consider it carefully would be my main point.
Thank you, Miss Melissa. What about Mr. Peter? Managing between the academic side and the dance side.
Before that question, I'll just speak to the question prior to this on competition. I think for many dancers, the allure of competitions is obvious enough, needs no further exposition. I think the main thing would be teaching the young dancers that excelling in dance is great. There is nothing wrong with it. It's excelling at all costs that would need a lot of rethink, because when the dance students or young dancers start to judge their personal worth based on the number of dance medals they are winning, then clearly they've got certain things not figured out too rightly. So it's very important to teach them the value of competitions existing in the process of preparations. And sure, ultimately they might not emerge on top, but still there are many values and many skills that have been gained along the way. The other point, I think your question leans more towards how, or perhaps this is a parent who is asking about how exactly to advise the young child to balance academic studies and dance. I think it's case by case. A lot depends on the temperament and aspiration of the child, the gift of the child in dance. What matters most of all would be teaching the child from very young how to manage his or her time. I think that would be more valuable, whichever career it is, whether dance or otherwise, that this person goes into. That they simply cannot have their cake and eat it too. Something's got to give if they want to do well academically, while at the same time do well in dance. They have to make the time for both. But if they've got it figured out that it's more important to excel in one area over the other, then they need to allocate the time accordingly as well. So teach them from very young to be able to manage their time effectively.
Thank you, Mr. Peter. I really like your answers to the previous questions about, I think competitions, winning is not everything, because they will be able to flourish in other things as well, and they learn along the way. There is another question about from Tanya. I would like to hear how other teachers tackle correcting technical faults and flaws online, particularly given the language or cultural barriers that come with teaching internationally. Anybody would like to share a little bit about that? Mr. Rasmi?
I mean, teaching on Zoom was new for everybody, so we have to start adapting, and just watching the camera. Sometimes it was hard to see the angle of camera, and you have to talk with the students to fix that, or the space they had. But I think we all were being creative and finding new way to teach and new language to use, because you're not in a person. And for example, I taught 6:30 in the morning in UK, people in Australia and Singapore and Japan. So, but was a good class. I think what it makes students more independent. You give the task, you give the feedback. It's not easy to give personal correction as you are in the class, but and there was no time, because it was time allocated for that. There was not so much time to stop to each of them, and you have time after class to talk. I think giving the task, giving very precise in the beginning of the class, design the class very adaptable for Zoom. It really, really helps. But I do think nothing can be replaceable when you're in studio than you're in Zoom. I think talking even with the students, because they have this, some of them, they have problem with this watching you, mirror image, it's right or left, which side. So trying to give some cues in whether in your room, I think it helped a lot. But I think being very clear and precise and very simple, I think sometimes in language you use, it really helps the students.
Thank you, Mr. Rasmi. Anyone else would like to add anything about this?
Trying to give some cues.
Okay, I think we have some more questions here. It's quite a long question. Let me read through. Okay. We more like going forward, if we need to go online again, which most probably moving forward, online can be another platform. How does this shift online be able to benefit the kids, and for those who don't learn, as well as being physical classes, and also for the parents to understand that training still has to go on and not just stop because there's a lockdown, something like that. Yeah. Somebody wants to answer this question, Mr. Baptiste?
I can give it a try. I think it's a difficult one, because obviously, so the students that I teach are obviously, they've made the choice to come to the school, and so we don't have to work with the parents and to encourage them, but we had to work with the students to say, no, you need to keep going, you don't give up, don't give up. And the likelihood that we will carry on online at some point is probably high. We're expecting, for example, some students to be having to self-isolate, so they'll have to move, but the rest of the class would still be in the studios. And so that we find very difficult. What we feel works the best is the moments where our students, when the teacher is fully dedicated to the people who are online, and that they can really spend no time with someone in the studio at the same time. And yeah, we are expecting to carry on online at points, and we just need to spend money into it so that we have more teachers, so that we can dedicate time. We had our lower classes, so the CAT scheme, which is from 16 to 18 years old, where we had extra teachers assistant to support. So the teacher was demonstrating, there was an assistant able to watch and be able to give feedback. Yeah, lots of different things. I'm not sure that answered the question, sorry. But we are expecting to have moments where we go back online for sure. And what we're trying to do is think about it now. So because the first time it happened, like everyone else, when Resmi was saying, it hit us, like a brick wall, and we had to go fast. So now we're trying to get ready for it so that we can do it when it's necessary.
Thank you, Baptiste. I think because over here our guests are a lot of us are teachers, and they are just thinking of how to handle the situation in terms of explaining to also parents and students to never give up. Even if it's online, we still have to go on, because life does go on, and we really need to be still on top. Yes, Mr. Resmi, you have something to say?
I mean, I hope we don't go again in lockdown.
I know.
But I think it's very important for training to go. I think for us, we put, as I said in the beginning, we put pretty much all the schedule. We do it in studio. We put it online for students. And it was very, very important to keep going. And I think just for them to connect with us and talk and just be part. As you say, you cannot do jump, you cannot do proper point, but at least we never lose that connection. And I think when we came back from lockdown, we were surprised how much ready the students will go in the studio to build up again. So imagine this didn't happen 5 years ago. We didn't have Zoom or anything. We'll be sitting at home and doing nothing. I think it's very important even for their mental health, for students to keep going and to be in connect with the teachers, with the musicians, and with their peers, Even we created a platform, an hour, for example, for students can start chatting with each other. I think it's very, very important for them to stay connected. For me, it's very important. I think it's very good. I hope technology gets better and better on this.
Thank you. I have another question here. It's from a parent. She's asking that nowadays there are a lot of activities alongside the regular learning. For example, competitions, workshops, masterclass, and holiday programs. Are those exposures benefiting for my child? Or I should focus her more on her regular learning path, so she is able to settle down and focus to do a regular thing, focus on settling on regular activities. So maybe, Robert, would you like to answer this?
Sure, this is a really great question, and one that my parents always ask as well, in terms of the extracurricular activities, summer courses, Easter courses. There's so much out there at the moment. And I think, again, it goes down to balance and education. I think it's everything in moderation is a good thing. One thing I did benefit from when I was young were the summer courses. And I think it's always good to renew, refresh, listen to different ways of execution in terms of movement, listening to different people's experiences, and also the social interaction, I think, is absolutely vital. Just going back to what Resmi was saying about having the students, we had obviously when we were online, we had a big comprehensive program, all of the delivery, and we would have lots of workshops with the students. They would meet, we would get external choreographers to work with them and do digital things, most amazing things, and more importantly, get guest speakers to come and speak to the students. So you know, ordinarily it would be really difficult with people's schedules to be able to get them to come and visit the school and speak to them. Even Carlos Acosta, who lives just down the road, just to get him into the school would have been, you know, he's absolutely flat out, the guy. So having that opportunity, and everyone, if you think about it, was sitting at home. Everyone had a number of hours a day that they could dedicate to actually sharing their experiences. And that's, you know, people like psychologists. So it was actually a really rich time. And this is one of those positives that I think we can continue to learn from and move forwards. But I agree, particularly in the online format. It's like from one of the previous questions, there is just so much out there, so much opportunity. You don't know what's going to be really helpful and beneficial versus something that could potentially cause injury, for example. So I think you just have to be really mindful about the options that are there and what you actually expose your child to. I personally, I mean, we are a vocational training. We have a very strict methodology. We have our system of training in place. So I always try to educate the parents to not confuse rudimentary training and extracurricular. I think this is something that happens on the side, and I think it's the purpose of that is to enrich the experience of the daily training, but you don't want to have the student confused too much with different methodology, different systems of training. I mean, my grandma used to say there's more than one way to skin a cat. That was her phrase, her term. And I get that, absolutely. But I think particularly at a younger age, the students need those boundaries. They need to know what their daily diet and training consists of, and then what is something, I suppose, a bolt-on or something that they can experience. And I think it is so valuable to get these experiences, but it has to be in moderation. We recommend as a school that when our students go home for their summer holidays, they experience a maximum of 2 weeks of extracurricular summer school, summer courses. But any more than that, there's that danger of suffering from burnout. I think they've got to get life experience as well. You know, when we're not in lockdown, when we are able to interact with other people, I always say to my students, how are you going to play the role of Romeo or Juliet if you've never had your heart broken? You've got to get life experience in order to be able to, at a later date, input those experiences into the narrative of your work, particularly in narrative ballets. So that's sort of my answer to that. I think they're brilliant, but again, moderation.
Thank you, Mr. Robert. We have one question from one of the attendees. I think she meant, or he meant, online competitions. Is it compared to physical competitions, whether it's still worth doing it? Yes. Mr. Peter, would you like to share something about that?
I would say a lot depends on the nature of the competition, its overall objectives. So it pretty much varies. For some competitions, I would imagine being the spectacle that it usually is, nothing beats the onstage experience, both for the students as well as for the teachers and the audience. So if it were to pivot online, I'm not sure if the same experience can be replicated, but I agree with what the other speakers mentioned earlier on. For want of another better alternative, sometimes for certain competitions to keep going and allow the young people to still have something aspirational to work towards, the online experience might just be the next best thing.
Thank you. Thank you. I think also it connects with the questions about having many online courses going on, and what to actually look at, which kind which one they want to choose to attend. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Peter. Do you have any more questions, Kai-Mui, from our guests?
I have one question. I think it actually can stretch beyond dancing. It can go to the other area of your learning. it actually says the question is related to dance, but I think it can stretch out broader. It says if a child loves dancing or ballet and want to pursue it further, but in terms of technique, performance, musicality, and other aspects are average, would she be able to someday have a career in dance or ballet if she continues her training but having average skills? What advice can you give to both child and the parents for such a situation?
Mr. Resmi, do you have something to say?
Yeah.
I mean, depends on age you're talking, I think. So, but I think, I don't know what average or talented. I think it's more how much you want to be a dancer, you know? And I think it's always worth exploring as we keep talking and researching. And I think giving a try, why not? Talking with people who and applying for different schools, because different school, different approach. And I'm not sure the word average or talented, you know, I think it's, for me, it's how much it's in your heart and you have a dream. If you have a dream, everything is possible. And if you want to be a professional dancer, have this as a career, I think everything. But I think it's where the summer schools are in place, where the audition are in place. And I think talking with the right people, I think it's possible, everything.
Thank you. Maybe we can have a gallery view of all our attendees.
I think Batista has a question. I need to say something.
Mr. Resmi, someone has something?
Sorry, I just wanted to add to Resmi because I thought that was a great answer. But I just wanted to say, dance, also some aspect of dance can be at times, but dance is not competitive gymnastics. So, and I know, of course, some aspects of whether it's ballet or hip hop, you know, where you have to be able to do that thing. If you can't do it, then of course, for that performance, it's not gonna work. So just like Resmi was saying, dance is huge. And so it's all about expectation and keeping a good sense of reality. And so when we interview, for example, our students and potential students, and some of them, and we say to them, okay, where do you see yourself in 3 years after you get a degree from us? And often they don't know, which is great. We'd rather this openness of they need to discover. But some come to us and say, oh, I know what I'll be doing. I'll be doing NDT, Netherlands Dance Theatre. And for us, it's a big red flag because we're thinking, well, then I'm not too sure you're in the right place because obviously, and often they don't know, one of our dancers end up in NDT. It's not impossible, but it's not, that would be a very rare occasion. But also it might be too late for them in the sense that we think you do not have those skills and it's not going to happen and it's okay. And that's okay. So I think I agree with Redmi. What is average? I'm not sure, but yeah, just keep a sense of reality. It's like, okay, no, I can be a dancer. I might not be that exact dancer, just like I was never a hip hop dancer. I tried, but I can't spin on my head. It's just not like you go through the loss and you accept, no, it's fine. I'll do all of these other things and that are just as valid. I think that's a great question.
Thank you, Mr. Baptist. Anyone else of our speakers would like to add to that?
Just briefly, it's important to help the young dancers or the child discover why he or she wants to dance in the first place. To uncover that for himself or herself. Because once that is worked out, it will be something of a life calling. If it isn't a life calling, there is certainly a passion going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Peter.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that, which is the same thing. It's like discovering who you are as a dancer is also the same journey you're taking as discovering who you are as a person. And it takes that growth and those steps that you're going through, daily, and really reacquainting yourself with yourself in all these different situations. And, it's really great that parents are asking the questions as well, because same with what we were talking about in terms of competitions, it's very much the attitude in which you go into a competition with, as well as the attitude of the people around you. Like, the teachers, the parents, what are you emphasizing when you encourage a child to go for a competition? What is the outcome that you're actually asking for at the end of it? And for, I think, everybody here, what we're looking for is not the competition result. We're looking for who is this person going to be as a dancer, as a creator, as an artist at the end of it. Well, we're talking 30, 20, 40 years. No, we're not saying in the next 2 months. What are you producing? We want to see you in dance, contributing to it, being part of it, partaking in it for many, many years to come. And I think it's that mindset, that we're all interested in.
Thank you. I have a question from a principal from China. So he's asking that besides going to vocational schools, what are the other ways for students to be a professional dancer and have a career? In China, Chinese students goes to vocational schools around the age 10 and 12, and they may become a professional dancer after. But what are the opportunities do your students have out there, and what career would they make? Yes, that's me.
I mean, I'm talking about the central. We are upper school, how it works in UK. You have to come at us at 16, not necessarily from vocational school, but you can have from any dance studios with a good training. It has to be certain standards to get in. So has to be, it's a standard. So I think a question is, I mean, I was at school at 10 years old in vocational schools up to 18 when I got in company. But I've seen it here over the years working, since I worked in Canada and I worked here. People can come in, through the, not necessarily 10 years old, but they can come from any dance studios with a good training, good foundation, good base. For ballet and contemporary, it's not necessary. And they can have a very good career. I mean, I have seen people come in at our age of 16, probably not as strong as people who are at vocational schools in that age. But by the 3 years, their development is huge, and they're around the world dancing right now. So could be both ways. I think it's a good way. I'm not saying which one way it's wrong and one other way it's good, but yes, it's possible.
Robert, do you have anything to add on?
I think it's just, I suppose it boils down to two questions, really. What type of company would that individual like to perform with ultimately? And how appropriate is the training that they're currently having in order to get to that goal? I'll use maybe Australia as an example. They have like maybe one vocational training organization in the country, and a lot of students just go to their local dance school. The level of those local dance schools in Australia is wonderful. It's absolutely second to none, and we will quite regularly take some of those students directly into our sixth form. So I think there are many different routes. I think it really would primarily depend on where your end goal would be. Obviously, you have to be quite realistic. If you wanted to get employment in a major international classical ballet company, something like the Royal Ballet or Birmingham Royal Ballet, English National, then we would obviously recommend vocational training from a young age, ideally. But then there are people who have broken the mold. There was a principal dancer, a male dancer at Birmingham Royal Ballet. He started dancing when he was 18 years old and still made it into the Birmingham Royal Ballet as a lead principal. So, you can defy the odds. There are many different routes. I think you just have to do the research. What is going to be an appropriate level of training in terms of preparation for the company that you would like to aspire to be in. So it's not an easy question to answer. I think a lot of it will be circumstantial, but I think do the research, and I hope that was helpful.
Thank you. That's
Any of our guests have any questions?
Yes, we have another message coming in. As asking that how do we engage students at home when we are conducting hybrid classes with both physical students and the students on Zoom at the same time? Melissa, would you like to help to answer this?
Yeah, sorry, can you just repeat that one more time about Zoom and...
Okay, so how to manage the class with both physical students in the studio and the students on Zoom at the same time?
So I'm laughing because we basically determined that that's not a good idea. And that, as Baptiste also said earlier, either focus fully on the students in the classroom or focus fully on the students on Zoom. Basically, what we do is we just split the class and have separate time slots for the students. Really don't recommend mixing that because it's really difficult on the teacher. If you absolutely have to, then you might need an assistant teacher in place, one to monitor the Zoom, one to monitor class. But yeah, in general, really don't suggest that you do it. So if you can find another solution for it, we recommend that.
This question is asked by an enrichment school teacher. I think with the current Singapore situation is that there are some parents comfortable attending physical classes, and there are some parents probably due to the safety concern, but they do not want to stop training, so they opt for Zoom classes. So I think there are quite a common things ongoing for the teachers' side that they would like to have as many students keep dancing as possible. So I understand it's quite a difficult task for all teachers.
If you really have to, I think some of the other things we do is the asynchronous teaching as well, which means we prepare material for the student who's Zooming in to check at home first. So we might pre-record some of the exercises so they see it ahead of time and get familiar with it and then can follow along in class. Or we do a follow-up session quickly at the end of class to debrief with them and check on them as well. Other things are, this is tough, but if you can, you really need a better microphone. So you need to be on your wireless AirPod while you're teaching the main class so that they can hear you, because you cannot leave the Zoom session. You can't be too far away from the microphone on the laptop. So you definitely need your AirPods. If you could put one hanging in the studio, that would be amazing. We also do 3-camera setup. So sometimes if you need to catch the teacher from different angles, you need more than one camera so that the students at home can follow the teacher's body from different angles. And that's just to prevent the teacher having to give all of that attention. So, I mean, those are some of the things technologically that we can do to, if we have to work with that. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have covered quite a good number of questions. Can we have just a view of all the attendees, the guests, then we can have a look at everyone. Nishan, if we can put everyone on a gallery view. I think we're trying to remove all the spotlight at the moment and then having a gallery view so all our speakers can see everyone. Yeah. Any questions that our guests would like to have with our speakers today?
Yeah, I'm running through the chat group
and having a gallery view.
I think one point I could add briefly to the question before this one, Haing's question concerning the dancer career. I think briefly speaking, it is equally potent and important to let the dancers know that there is something called a dance-related career as opposed to a dancer career. So there are many opportunities in that sector as well.
Thank you.
I do agree. I think we covered that, Peter, in 2 years ago, right? Yes. Thank you very much. I think we are good. If at any point in time, if anyone has any more questions along the way, I mean, we can have future conferences as well. So please feel free to write to us. Otherwise, thank you very much for attending. Thank you, speakers, also, and all the attendees, and also all tuning in on live streaming. Thank you very much. We can all unmute ourselves ready, right? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rasmi. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Baptiste. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Melissa. Appreciate it. We can thank you, Nishan.